Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we are going to be working solely on proofs which can help us prove different triangles congruent. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Okay, so our first problem tells us that TM is congruent to PR and TM is parallel to RP. We are asked to prove that triangle TEM is congruent to triangle PER. Let's go ahead and start off by writing our given. So in our triangle, we know that TM is congruent to PR, and we also know that TM is parallel with RP. Since we know that TM is parallel with RP, we can say that angle MTE, which is right here, and angle RPE, which is right over here, are congruent. We can say this because if lines are parallel, then alternate interior angles will be congruent. We know that these two angles are alternate interior angles because if you look at TP being the transversal, then you can clearly see that these two angles are alternate interior angles. Let's go ahead and write that down in our proof. However, angle MTE and angle RPE aren't the only angles that we can say are congruent. Angle TME, which is this angle over here, as well as angle PRE, are also alternate interior angles if you look at MR being the transversal. So let's go ahead and write this out as well. Now for our final step. Remember that we still need to prove that triangle TEM is congruent to triangle PER. However, we can see that we know that this angle, this side, and this angle are all congruent to this angle, this side, and this angle. So since we know that an angle, a side, and an angle are all congruent, we can use the ASA postulate to prove these triangles congruent. Remember that the ASA postulate states that if two angles and the included side of one triangle are congruent to two angles and the included side of another triangle, then the triangles will be congruent. So we can finally say that triangle TEM is congruent to triangle PER. And this completes our proof. Let's go ahead and try another problem. Here we are given different information, however we are still asked to prove the same triangle. Let's go ahead and start off by writing our given. Okay, this is our given. We are told that E is the midpoint of TP. Well, if E right over here is the midpoint of TP, then we can say that TE is congruent to EP from the definition of a midpoint. However, before we write this down, we are also told that E is the midpoint of MR. So we can say that ME is congruent to ER. We can say all of this because of definition of a midpoint. Let's go ahead and write this down in our proof. There is one other thing that we can find directly from the picture which will help us prove these triangles. Over here, you can see that these two angles are vertical angles. We know that vertical angles are congruent. Let's go ahead and write this in our proof. Now we have three known things between these two triangles which we know are congruent. We have the side, an angle, and another side. This is exactly what the SAS postulate states. So we can say that triangle TEM is congruent to triangle PER because of the SAS postulate. Okay, let's go ahead and try one last problem. In our given, we are told that plane M bisects segment AB. And we are also told that PA is congruent to PB. We are told to prove that triangle POA is congruent to triangle POB. Let's go ahead and write out our givens first. Okay, so we can see that plane M bisects segment AB. We know that when something bisects a segment, we now have a midpoint. So we can say that plane M is the midpoint of AB. Let's go ahead and write this down in our proof. This will be the definition of a segment bisector. Next, we can say that AO is congruent to OB because of the definition of a midpoint. Let's go ahead and mark this in our picture, as well as marking that PA is congruent to PB, which was in our given. Now there's another thing in our picture which we can say is congruent to each other. If you look, you can see that segment PO is combining the two triangles together, which means that segment PO is in both triangles. So we can say that segment PO is congruent to itself, which is the reflexive property. Now we have three sides known about these two triangles. When we know that three sides of one triangle are congruent to three sides of another triangle, we can say that the triangles are congruent by the SSS postulate. Let's go ahead and write this down in our proof. This now concludes our proof. Remember, if in a given you are told that a plane bisects a segment, make sure to treat the plane as a segment. This will make it a lot easier to solve the proof. Thank you guys so much for watching this video about proofs about congruent triangles. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel down below if you haven't already. Thanks again so much, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye!